You ever just want to beat somebody, but like in Pokemon? Well, we got a game coming out for you. It's called Pokemon Champions. And for one, I have a lot of investment in this game. I used to compete in Pokemon VGC as a kid, but now, I refuse to play Scarlet and Violet, so I do not compete in VGC. But maybe one day because of this new game called Pokemon Champions. Pokemon Champions appears to be a turn-based RPG that you can play on iOS or Switch and then be able to battle each other in a kind of VGC, I'm guessing, format. I'm not sure if there's single battle, but it looked like it's going to be a battle simulator, which is really freaking awesome because, I think the biggest issue with competitive Pokemon is how hard it is to train up your team. Prior to X and Y, I think that the biggest thing that people used was RNG manipulation, which again is like, not part of a regular gameplay. You gotta have like a frame counter and really understand how the internals of the game work to manipulate it to get perfect IV Pokemon. If you don't know what IVs are, they're a hidden value that's used to calculate your stats. So it goes from 0 to 31 in the modern games. If you're at 0, you have the lowest possible stat that Pokemon can have because it takes its base stat and uses the IV to calculate its stat. Although hidden power isn't in the modern games, in past games, IVs were used to calculate hidden power. A common one would be that if you had 31 in all stats, but 30 or 0 in attack, then you would have hidden power ice. Seems a little bit convoluted, right? And I think a lot of people were thinking this, I feel like this is a big gap between competitive Pokemon and casual players, is that you have to do a ton of homework and kind of grind in a way that necessarily isn't very fun. If you playing competitive, you want to do your best and therefore you want to have perfect IV stats and you want to EV train in a way that is best suited for your Pokemon, and that requires a lot of work. And the reason why I'm rambling so much about EVs and IVs is because I really need them to revamp this system, especially in Pokemon Champions. I really worry about, because of the connectivity between the different Pokemon games, that they're going to be trying to force you to transfer your mons to really get the full experience. And that would really be disheartening because I know a lot of people, like how TCG Pocket brought a lot of people from the mobile market into Pokemon. I feel like this game could do the same. I think people don't realize is that a lot of people play Pokemon Showdown who do not play Pokemon. Like literally Pokemon Showdown is their version of Pokemon to them. And so I think that making this accessible and giving an alternative to Pokemon Showdown, because I have my own issues about Pokemon Showdown, which I will love to rant about in just a second, but I hope that Pokemon decides to take a different route with this game. I hope that they treat it more like Pokemon Unite, where each character is a champion rather than copying and pasting the same stats in the same system from before. I think that the balancing would be a lot smoother if they actually look at, hey, maybe the stats that they set for this Pokemon in Gen 1 nearly like 20 years ago maybe wasn't the play. I think the biggest issue with modern competitive Pokemon is power creep. To keep up with making good Pokemon, they want their new Pokemon to really stand out from the others, so they end up giving them usually unique abilities, unique moves, and this ends up flipping the meta on its head. A lot of Pokemon that used to be really, really good are now just mediocre in a sea of Pokemon that are significantly better than it. And the re-edition of Megas is really going to shake up the format with Terra. I think that both of them can kind of balance each other out a little bit better so that you can have kind of like two boss Pokemon, one your Terra and the other one your Mega. We can only speculate how much they're going to change the formula from the prior games. I do hope there's a big shift. It doesn't have to change too much. I think a lot of the mechanics they've had in the past are perfectly fine, but I think the smaller deck size for the launch in the later edition of more Pokemon will allow them to balance it over time. I think that would be a way that they can introduce Pokemon later to counter really big meta threats, and then they have a little bit more control over that. What they don't have control over is Pokemon Showdown and the Smogon's handling of the OU format. Yeah, that's right, I'm calling out Smogon right here, right now. I don't have an issue with Pokemon Showdown itself. I actually think Pokemon Showdown is a very good, service. It is basically an online Pokemon simulator where you can play almost any generation and with countless formats that they're trying to keep alive. In addition to the VGC format, you don't have to train up any of your mons to compete in this. You just have to go on a browser and really just enjoy and battle Pokemon. I actually see a world where Pokemon Champions could get Pokemon Showdown shut down because Pokemon Showdown is not an official Pokemon game. It is a fan site, and you know, Pokemon Champions is basically trying to, I believe, take over the Pokemon Showdown kind of genre because, again, Pokemon, you have to play up this entire playthrough and like train your mons to be able to compete in these tournaments. Instead, they can have their own battle simulator so they don't have to worry about third party doing weird shit like Smogon. Why do I have to mention Smogon? Who is Smogon? The Smogon Council? I don't know them. Smogon runs a grassroots Pokemon scene for competitive single battle. Smogon's rule set is used on Pokemon Showdown in the most popular single battle formats, where Pokemon are placed in a tier based on their usage stat so that Pokemon who are weaker can have their own competitive playground to play in, while the stronger ones are delegated to the top tiers like OU and Uber. Smogon takes it upon themselves to ban certain Pokemon from OU or other tiers if they feel like they are too strong. Sometimes it is based on a vote, sometimes it is a decision unanimous by the Smogon Council. Now, Drizzleboy, why the hell are you rambling about Pokemon Smogon? What the hell is Smogon? I still don't know what Smogon is, but let me tell you, Smogon has been under a lot of heat under the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet era. I think most of it is due to the handling of Terra. In VGC, we have open team sheets, so therefore at a tournament you can see all the moves, all the items, and all the Terra types of a Pokemon. This balances it significantly more than if you was hopping into battle and not knowing what Pokemon's Terra is. It would be almost impossible to make predictions. And so this is where Smogon came in. Smogon made the executive decision at the beginning of the format to not touch Pokemon Terra at all. My issue is, instead of trying to revisit, hey, that maybe just displaying Terra type, not necessarily full team list, might be a way to balance the single battle format, instead making sweeping bans to Pokemon that abuse Terra type the most. I think, to me, this is a little bit of abuse of the system and power that they have. I've kept up with Smogon for a very long time. Never have I seen a generation where they have banned so many mechanics in Pokemon to try to come up with some sort of balancing that they are making up. On the other hand, it is a grassroots league, so they have the right to do whatever they want if their community feels that way. However, you compare to older generations like Gen 1, Gen 2, all the way up to Gen 5, there's never been this many bans in a single format. And to me, I feel like if you have to ban 18 Pokemon to get to the consensus of a balanced metagame, which many people are discussing is not balanced, why can't we go back and maybe restructure how we looked at Terra, how we looked at the format as an entirety? Maybe instead of trying to ban it, we accept that power creep has gotten this far. I think, to me, an example is Volcarona. Yeah, Volcarona is extremely powerful, but how can you let Volcarona get banned, but in the same coin, have King Gambit still in the format? I think King Gambit and Volcarona have a very interesting dynamic. It's like, okay, if they start setting up Quiver Dance, you can Sword Dance Sucker Punch. If they Terra Fairy, you can Terra Fire and Iron Head them. There's a lot of different ways that those two Pokemon interact as counterparts in the metagame, but we lose that. Instead, we just have King Gambit. It's like, okay, we lost one check to King Gambit, the most broken Pokemon in the format. Then they have other decisions like, okay, well, the format's not going great. Why don't we introduce Darkrai into the format? Like a Pokemon that's never been seen, in OU before. I feel like, if anything, it's like they're just messing around to have fun. They're not even trying to balance anything legitimately. Okay, so yeah, they're banning some Pokemon. We can live with it. We could try it. But they're banning whole mechanics like sleep. How are you gonna ban sleep from a modern format? In old formats, they do some like refining, but it's like no one actually sitting there playing Pokemon Crystal so that they can battle someone on the internet. To me, sweeping bans of mechanics like sleep should happen after the format has passed. Most people are not playing Pokemon Crystal to battle in competitive formats. They're doing it on Pokemon Showdown where they're emulated. I feel like, to me, that there should be a middle ground where it's like, if I wanted to, I could kind of recreate the Smogon battle experience in game. I think that's where there's a big disconnect between singles and doubles. VGC is having a huge growth because of Smogon's own mismanagement of its circuit. On the other hand, Pokemon has mismanaged its own single battle circuit because in-game they have time restrictions that make it almost impossible to finish a long single battle battle. To me, I hope Pokemon Champions becomes an alternative to Pokemon Showdown and Smogon, especially for the single battle format. I think that I never really got into it because of these issues, my issues with Smogon. I think that they could, with Pokemon Champions, bring single battle and double battle to the forefront. If you in the competitive Pokemon scene, I'm sure you've known a lot about the drama with Smogon and Smogon Council, so I hope that people can finally enjoy single battle in a way that is, you know, reflective of the actual Pokemon video game instead of a meta game these fans are forcing into existence. I'm extremely excited about Pokemon Champions. I'm going to be playing on launch and let you know my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Drizzleboy out.